me show these suckers how to ball out here. Oh, man, let me get this together here. Oh, layup. Oh, no. Shot. Oh, three. Oh, it's like Brick City out here. Mid-range. Oh, my goodness. I can't buy a bucket out here. I missed the whole damn basket. Oh, my goodness. What's going on, man? My game is looking trash. Oh, here we go. Black Power Media shirt. Now we cooking. Tree. I'm taking on 3 of y'all with these right here. Between the legs. Oh, my goodness. Behind the back. Layup. Oh, and did he just do a reverse? He is in beast mode out here. I ain't gotta look, it's falling. Oh my goodness, this guy is going 3, 2, 1. Kobe! Nice. Black Power Media, baby. Nice. Empower yourself. Go get you some of that Black Power Media again. Right here, blackpowermedia.org. Yeah.
I mix what I like. Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Welcome. Jump in, do all of the things, hit all of the buttons. We have a lot coming up this morning, so I just want to remind everybody again, as the ear doctor was saying, get that good merch, support the channel, like, share, subscribe. Make sure the bell is selected because there are many things coming to the channel very soon at various times. Some adjustments to my own, or additions, I should say, to my own broadcast schedule, so to speak. So you don't want to miss any of it. Make sure the bell is on so you stay caught up, et cetera, and so forth. Welcome everybody who's already here, to those who will see and hear this later piece, and welcome to you as well. But again, we have a lot to get to in the second half of the show. Sebs Solomon is back to talk about her latest on crypto colonialism. As my man Grady used to say, goobly goop, boy. It's about, she is just, if there was anything left to the rotting corpse of the claims around cryptocurrency, Sebs has, melted them away, eviscerated them. So I'm very happy to have her come back. And in the first half, we got a number of folks, some are already with us, so I'm going to get right to them, surrounding, in the micro immediate case, the Freedom of Information requests and demands from April Goggans of BLM-DC, who we've had on the program a couple times around her work with BLM-10 and accountability. I believe she was involved with that one as well. Now I can't remember, but COINTELPRO is still alive and well. In fact, what was once illegal is all perfectly legal and happening in greater degrees, probably with less attention though in the immediate moment. So, but to put some of that into context, we have our dear brother Max Rameau, who's going to jump in now, of Pan-African Community Action. Good morning, brother Max. It's good to see you again.
Good morning. Good to see you.
And as we await others jumping in, let me pull up this story, and then we can get started with you to sort of set some of the background and context and some of the work that PACA, or Pan-African Community Action, is looking to do around this issue, and the analysis you all bring to this issue. But as this flyer here says, let's just get everybody caught up with the immediate. No COINTELPRO in DC, show up for April. MPD, and I want to ask you to talk a little bit about the array of policing in DC and the DMV, DC proper, and what the role of the MPD is, Metropolitan Police Department. But MPD has been spying on BLM-DC's April Goggans and are refusing to give the FOIA Freedom of Information request documents. Show up for April and watch her hearing, which is tomorrow, Tuesday, June 14th. At 9:30 a.m. I'm going to actually pitch this to the Remix Morning Show crew that we sort of do a live viewing to wrap up our broadcast tomorrow morning, and see if we can work that in out of solidarity. And just quickly here, and the link to this story from PACApower.org is in the show description already. But just very quickly, the DC government is deploying COINTELPRO-like tactics against organizations and individuals fighting to protect and expand our rights. Of course, this is not news to those who have been engaged in political work here for any amount of time. But now, thanks to one local organizer, there is proof. Suspecting she was being surveilled by the Metro Police Department, MPD, April Goggans of Black Lives Matter DC, BLM-DC, filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the documents the DC government had on her. After years of hiding, stalling, and lying by MPD, April took the request to court. The most important hearing to date is scheduled for June 14th, 2022 at 9:30 a.m. is open to the public using the online court system and will determine if MPD is required to follow FOIA laws. Max, go ahead and give your initial thoughts on this. But please, if you would, get all of us, particularly those not familiar with DC, where MPD fits into this array of policing and surveillance and all of this, and then anything else you wanted to share with us, please.
So first of all, thank you for talking about this important issue. So, of course, DC is a very, relatively speaking, small city, and it's its own enclave. It's not a state, but sometimes it operates like one, sometimes it does not. And it's surrounded by Maryland on one side and Virginia on the other. And as you know, as everyone knows, there are a lot of protests that come to DC, and MPD handles them, the Metropolitan Police Department, as they're called, handles
Max,
them.
I'm sorry, forgive the interruption. I just see April jumping in. I want to bring her up and welcome her this morning. April, good morning. Greetings to you. Welcome. It's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. I've just asked, we just outlined what was going on, and I've asked Max to sort of contextualize for us what's going on, but in PACA's analysis, but particularly the role MPD plays in the array of DC surveillance.
Yeah.
So that's just where we are.
Perfect. Thank you.
So yes,
yeah, no problem.
MPD then has a pretty interesting role here, where they're both handling things like national protests. So when you have hundreds of thousands of people coming down to DC to protest, they handle a good chunk of that. Not that they handle it all alone, but they handle a good chunk of that. But they also handle then day-to-day policing, just like any other city. And it really is a very different scenario. So you can get away with all kinds of stuff while you're exercising your right to free speech in Washington, D.C., that you cannot get away with if you are just half a mile away in your own neighborhood protesting about police shooting Black people in the back. So it's a very interesting dynamic coming out of the exact same institution. With that said, the role of DC police is exactly the same as police anywhere else, which is to control and contain working class, particularly Black, particularly immigrant communities, because it is the enforcement wing of the system. And that's what it does. And that's because the system needs that to happen, needs this to be controlled and contained. Then they send the police to do it. They're not going to send the mayor to do it. They're not going to send the ambulance service to do it. They send the police to do it. And that's what they're doing here. They're recognizing that there are some unhappy people in Washington, D.C., some people unhappy with our level of oppression. And we are speaking up about it. And people like April are speaking up about it and organizing around it and mobilizing around it. And then it's their job essentially to put a clamp on that, to make sure it happens within the approved range of protest and not go outside of that. Once it goes outside of that, then you're looking at all kinds of consequences.
So speaking of approved range of protest, April, you start where you like, but I'll throw out an initial question to you. You entered the scene, engaged in at least in this iteration in Black Lives Matter activism and protest. And then as we were looking at the story here, and again, we can come back to it, and it's linked in the show description. And obviously, we're encouraging people to show up on the online YouTube channel tomorrow morning. We're going to try to have a remix. I'm going to encourage us to have a remix live viewing as part of our programming tomorrow morning. But you joined the activist community. You're doing this work, and then as the story says, you said you noticed surveillance. Particular to you, and let's pick up there or anywhere else you'd like, but if you like, we could start there and then just tell us what you saw happening and what you did next.
Yeah, so the first thing that I did, and I was a housing organizer before this, but first thing that I did in Black Lives Matter was, the mayor was, she was unveiling a new crime law that basically, just totally, I mean, they're all terrible, but this was like they can go into your aunt's house, your mom's house, try to pick you up. They could no knock warrant. They were adding extra penalties to small things. So basically, we were like, I don't know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna go shut it down. So we went to the press conference and literally shut it down. Like we let her talk, and then as soon as she said, she's more police, we shut it down. It was huge. It was right here in Ward 8. But within a week, we used to have Black Joy Sunday at my house. So it was literally like kids and everybody would just come. Nobody's allowed to talk about work or whatever. And then there was just one night where these two officers started harassing two Black women who were leaving. And it was a huge scene because they were doing we got a call, we're just trying to keep you safe. But they were like looking through the window, my window, which is how I knew that they were there. And the call was somewhere around here, there was a break-in or a neighbor call, which is what they always say. The officer was Officer Howden. It's important to remember that. But after that time, you would see there were just police parked on the street because we went live that night and people from everywhere, just, rebroadcast it. But, then it would be a car here and a car there, just parked outside just where I could see them, I'm like, oh, that's nothing, right? And this was a little bit before kind of the police setup that is now, where it's just different. You just know it's different because there hadn't been police in these places, since I had lived here. And so, I'd wake up one night and across the street from my bedroom, there's, they have their brightest lights. They park there all night with their brightest lights on. At that time, I called my council member and was like, that cannot possibly be like that person's assigned place with his lights on, which of course it was. But and then you would see officers would follow me. And, it's like the movies where you're like, okay, I'm going to turn here. There's no reason for them to come. And I just started taping everything, because the other thing that happens with people who are surveilled is that other people who are not surveilled are like, you're just really paranoid. This is real wild. But then it started I would be out in the neighborhood and they'd be like, Miss Goggans or April. And these are officers I didn't know at the time. It wasn't until I asked the commander, who at that time was Vendette Parker, who the officers were. And this was around like 2015 when all of this is happening. So finally, going to protests, my phone this is still today, but this is when my phone stopped working. Social media doesn't work. You'll just see tweets aren't loading right now. And I always take a picture with the time, which I mean, to people might be like, but no, it's every single time. And it's not just, so what you learn about all of this is not just the inability to continue to speak out, it's the inability to speak out with the terror that we have a million different ways to do that. And if you're by yourself out here, or we get you by yourself, you can't actually contact anyone. And I think for me, that was always it still is one of the biggest things, that is, I think, impacted me in this situation. But, you start to get used to it, which to me speaks volumes, right? Because you have a choice. You have a choice then to, like, all of this is about chilling speech. It's all about, you don't need to speak about police. And living in a city where there's more than 32 independent police departments, everybody says, oh, they're not all police. And yes, they actually are. You can go on MPD's website and see all of their, interjurisdictional agreements and such. So that at any time, anybody can say and do anything to you. And I say to you, because if you're out, I do cop watch also, which you have some old school DC cop watchers on here. But you're cop watching and the gun squad out of everybody is like, hey, Miss Goggans. And then they do something to somebody and they're like, oh, this is the NEAR Act. This is legislation we help pass. Talk to the council. They told us to do this. Clearly, clearly, like, just it's the harassment, it's the you're at a protest, you turn around, I'm running from tear gas canisters, and somebody says my name, I turn around, it's Officer Howden. I go to 7-Eleven, just trying to, probably, for me, I'm probably getting an energy drink. Turn around, it's Officer Howden. He realized I don't have my phone one time. He's like, oh, this is really scaring me. I'm gonna call for backup. And I'm looking everywhere, like my phone should not be my protection. Like it literally shouldn't be my protection, but it is. And so what you have then is an officer who is allowed to do whatever he wants. His partner then is Officer Wentz. Outside, after Trump was when Trump was elected, he was the more verbal, like waited outside when we were like that time council members saw, but they won't speak about it today, but they were there. And that guy ended up being, because we deposed them later, right? Like eventually we were able to bring in my case who we filed in 2017 to find these documents about surveillance, obviously, because they're there. Second of all, it was like a way that maybe we could understand as a movement community what was happening. And so we were able to get their names. And through all this MPD lying about whether or not they have my documents, we were able to depose them. Well, we were going to be able to depose both officers, but Officer Wentz was arrested during that time and jailed for trafficking guns in DC. So the other officer, we were able, Officer Howden, and then Vendette Parker, who was the commander at the time this was happening, hit those two's commander, and then became the FOIA officer for my case, right? And is now the whistleblower on the Amy Phillips case, which is about the watch list that NPD has around who they don't give FOIA to.
April, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Could you just run that last part back again? That was, forgive me, I'm
that was okay.
Slower than most, but
slower.
But there was a lot. I want to make sure the overlap was clear there, or that I understood, or that we understand the overlap, because I think that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
What you're talking about here. Yeah, because we just, you don't have to go all the way back, but just that last little bit there, just the to solidify that. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. So basically in the beginning, there were two officers. They were partners, Officer Howden and Officer Wentz.
Right.
And they were 7th District. At that time, the commander of 7th District was Vendette Parker.
Right.
And then by the time we filed, she became the MPD's FOIA officer, head FOIA officer. So she was also
demoted. She was demoted from commander over to the FOIA office.
Oh, so that was a demotion.
Oh yeah.
So one of those cops, Wentz gets arrested, so you can't deal with him because he's too busy in other crimes.
The cop they put in charge of following her around was later arrested himself for gun trafficking. This is the cop who they put in charge with following April around.
And the reason they found him was because he sold a gun to a vet who had just come home and couldn't get a gun because of their basically told somebody they were going to kill themselves. Sold the gun to him, and he did kill himself. There was another person that he had sold a gun to that had committed a murder. And then the third one of his guns, I mean, these were hundreds of guns. It was online. He was addicted to it, he said in his statement. That was in a robbery. So yeah, there you go. We do.
So that's Wentz.
Yeah. Wentz,
and their boss, Parker, is demoted. Is it in relation to all of this, or is that just another set of, she just had just another set of issues?
Yeah, they had other issues. That, and I mean, she was a Black woman, so I don't know if you guys have seen now, there's like 30 Black women who have, filed, and they're coming, I mean, they are telling all of the stories. So,
oh, wow. No, I haven't seen that. Okay, I got to get caught up on that too.
Telling the stories, all of them. It's real interesting. So we end up being able to depose Howden and Vendette Parker. 8
So, but then
hours.
you said Parker is demoted, becomes head, is now in charge of the requests that you are filing to get evidence on the illegal activities of her former
of her department.
Okay, of her department. Okay, and then you said she becomes a whistleblower. Who I missed that. Okay.
So in March, there's a public defender who been that I don't know exactly how it came out. Maybe somebody knew it was happening, but she's now retired. So in retiring, she signs an affidavit that talks about how Peter Newsham had a list of people, and it says, you know, a lot of them are journalists who like covered the stuff that we were doing, and said either don't give it to them, you know, make it difficult, or like make the copies so redacted or unusable.
Peter Newsham, the police chief.
Yes, thank you. Who's now in Montgomery, one of those counties in Maryland. So she just whistle blew about that. And then I guess there's a few other FOIA lawsuits by different groups. And she'll be testifying or speaking in those cases, which is real interesting. I think maybe she's more apt to do that because she was already gone during those during their cases, so it doesn't like she's not implicated in anything that happened in their cases. But the interesting thing is that Prince William County, yes, Prince William County. That was a demotion, by the way. That's very clear. It's, like 200 officers versus like 4,000. But yeah, so I mean, an MPD is, once you start doing this, you just learn that the stuff that I see about the surveillance is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because sometimes this surveillance is, I feel like it's almost a one-upship between like the gun recovery and then like me and Conti, because he'll get cussed out when I see him. It just happens. And then beat cops or whatever, right? And it's almost like once they realize who I am, it just ups the ante, especially when other people are around. I was at and I'll let y'all talk. I know I'm going on about this, but it's been on my head for the last 48 hours nonstop. I was at the scene of the police murder of DeAndre Johnson. And I was there when his mom and sister came. And the reason I knew it was them is if you've been to enough scenes, before family gets there, what it looks like. And I had walked with them because they were being followed by an officer. And they took that opportunity to like talk about me wanting clout and, I see Black Lives Matter. They're trying to figure out if this is their son and brother. And they berate them because they're upset at me. And the other officers started coming over there like, oh yeah, she's so-and-so. And I'm just like, right now, this is happening. And I have all these interactions on tape because, a lot of people are like, that's the thing about this is people are very easily discount you. I'm looking back at things that people have said or, not said about these things. And I smile and all of that now. But tomorrow is really important. And I put no stock in the government being the thing that stops all of this, or it's going to turn around and do the right thing from now on. But it makes me want people, and not people in the movement, people, everyday people, Black people and other folks, to stop and say like, there's nothing very different except for me being public. So all of these things are part of the system that controls everything that we do. These are the tactics and the mechanisms that and the beliefs that are, that the gang task force or the gang database here, all of these things are based on the same thing. It's just that I'm speaking out about them that makes that makes it necessitates in their mind an intervention. So.
I mean, I appreciate you again. Say as much as you need to, get it out as much as you can, because I can't imagine trying to keep, not only experience this, but try to keep it all together in your head. I mean, there's a lot going on. Max, get in and say anything you'd like, but I did want to come back quickly to this point in the story as it's written in PACA, exposing government misconduct, where it's written here that the DC government is literally using police to spy on its own residents based on their political activities, denying residents access to government documents that they are entitled based on their political activities, and actively lying about their conduct towards DC residents based on their political activity, and there are no consequences for these actions. After a negotiating period in May of 2019, a ransomware group, Babook, dumped 250 gigabytes of MPD data on the dark web, including psychological profiles and home addresses of police officers and internal emails. The emails range from the mundane to petty interpersonal squabbling, to details about the inner workings of the organization. The emails were also about who the MPD spied on, including April Goggans. The story goes on to talk a little bit about how, you know, this data dump was not some left radical, you know, effort, but ultimately ends up paying some dividends of sorts. Could you say anything more about any of that, or whatever else you would want to jump in and
sure.
add?
Well, first of all, if you check your inbox, Jared, I sent you the picture that kind of kicked it off that April referenced about the protests that she attended that drew the kind of attention to her that it did. But if you know, we talk about COINTELPRO, and when COINTELPRO, of course, is short for a counterintelligence program, and that was an FBI program that spied on all kinds of people, on LGBTQ groups way back in the day, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, on socialist organizations, on civil rights organizations, on anti-war organizations, on Black Power organizations, and individuals, and not only spied on them in a generic sense, but also then caused all kinds of problems inside of those organizations. So this is April, of course, at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which was hosted in Washington, D.C. in 2015. These are a bunch of mayors standing behind her, and she jumped up in front of the cameras and held up that sign talking about Laquan McDonald, who was a 17-year-old who was shot 16 times by Chicago police, and then the Chicago police covered up, with the help of their mayor, covered up the shooting. And you can imagine this was embarrassing for a bunch of mayors who didn't know who she was, but it was probably humiliating for the DC mayor. I think that's a fair description of it, and surely triggered the level of I would be willing to bet that she was being spied on before, but triggered the level of spying on that we saw here. So you can see how embarrassing this could be for the mayor. However, it being embarrassing for elected official, yeah, right. The embarrassment for an elected official is not a reason to unleash the wrath and the power of the state, the armed wing of the state, on her, to send a guy who is trafficking guns to go spy on her. But in any event, so we know about COINTELPRO. People talk about COINTELPRO, but the parts that lots of us forget and that they don't report is that we only know about COINTELPRO today, and we only have a name for it because there was, in 1973, there was a break-in into an FBI office in rural Pennsylvania. Some regular citizens, called themselves the Citizens for the Investigation of the FBI, broke into an FBI office, pulled out files, and then went through the files and sent those files to the media and said, here is a program you don't know about, but that is responsible for spying on and even murdering people in the United States. Most media houses refused to cover it, even though they knew the documents were legitimate. And ultimately, one newspaper covered it, the Washington Post. And once they covered it, then that opened up. Even the other newspapers that covered it only said that the Washington Post who covered it. They didn't really give credit to the people who actually uncovered all these illegal government actions, including murder. And if you're thinking, oh, this was in the 70s, right after the Civil Rights Movement, this would never happen again. Today, WikiLeaks, Julia Assange is is in prison today. You have whistleblowers who are in prison, such as Chelsea Manning. Is Chelsea Manning who
well,
uncovered all
Chelsea's
this?
out and taken a lot of conservative right-wing positions, but nevertheless, they were still done wrong, you know, at one point.
Yes,
So
yes, and this
we
is
can
not,
at
just to
least
be clear, it's
acknowledge
not, this is
that,
not a
but
defense
yeah.
of Assange and some of his
Right,
positions either.
right.
But this is just to show that that today the same thing happens, is that there's more consequences for people who whistleblow against illegal activity than there are consequences for people who engage in the illegal activity.
Yeah.
So long as that illegal activity is done by government officials. So I think that's where we are with it, is that COINTELPRO spied on and disrupted organizing in the United States. And my guess is that there's a similar program with a different name that is happening right now in DC and in cities across the country, and probably all across the country under some coordinated fashion. And we just don't know about it because no citizens group has broken into it here. And the rough equivalent is that we had a hacker group who released a bunch of information because the police department was not willing to pay the ransom amount that they proffered.
That I couldn't help but laugh when I read that part. I know it's not. I just couldn't help. I just thought that was kind of funny. That you know, probably through a whole bunch of other kind of shenanigans, they I was really, what I was thinking was they probably ripped off so much of their own budget that they couldn't afford the ransom. Even if they wanted to, they probably, you know, pocketed so much of the budget anyway. But
if that guy just would have sold a few more guns, they would have had the.
I mean, he was this close. You know what I mean? They were this close, and they could have paid. You know, but it also reminded me, of course, you know, in the reference to the counterintelligence program, to albeit for different political reasons, the break-in in Media, Pennsylvania, that uncovered the COINTELPRO overall. It's another sort of illegal break-in, again, for different political purposes, apparently, that reveals more about what April and others are suffering in DC. So, and obviously beyond. You know, DC is, I'm sure, not doing this on their own. But I want to make sure either of you can jump in and say anything you like. I just want to make sure that we get to at least this part of what you all have here in terms of what we want. Justice for April Goggans, stop spying on and harassing her, give the documents she's entitled to, stop breaking the law, comply with FOIA requests, no enemies list. And maybe you all could say another word about that. Consequences for government officials who break FOIA, no COINTELPRO, stop spying, and then ultimately community control of the police, which I definitely like to hear you both comment on. But
these are PACA's. This is PACA's list. This is not necessarily BLM-DC's list. Although we agree a lot significantly on all of this, I think the only area we're still discussing is the extent to which there's community control over police as a fundamental demand. But I think we're in agreement with everything above that.
Just real quick, shout out to Infinite Content. Appreciate the super chat. Fun fact: the break-in was scheduled on the night of the Ali Frazier fight because more attention we paid to focus on the fight. Exactly. And that also reminds me, I think we're going to have to work in at some point a not by myself segment, because I saw a recent, I can't, you know, comes up in my algorithm feed now. The latest from Thomas Sowell's channel is how Muhammad Ali ruined boxing and the country. So you know, in all his brashness and all of that, you know, black pride, Sowell is arguing he ruins. So I was like, good God, this dude is unbelievable. And his, you know, anyway, but thank you, Infinite Content. But yeah, anything, thank you for the clarity in terms of, you know, PACA, BLM-DC. I'd be very interested, April, in what BLM-DC is calling for in terms of what we want. But could you all work in your response this issue of the enemies list? Did we cover that this morning? I don't feel like.
So April,
what is that, and how does
April
that fit
did
in?
cover it a little bit. So what happened was that you had there were several people. It isn't just April, though probably more so with her than others, who were filing these FOIA requests, these Freedom of Information Act requests, which says that government documents are open and people should have access to them. So you can file a request and say to the police, for example, I want to see how much of your money is spent on salaries versus weapons versus whatever. You can also say, I want to see what documents you have on me, and submit to them your name. And what happens is that when these things are filed, some people get them right away, and some people, it takes forever for them to get it. And this was causing lots of consternation. So when this person who used to be the head of the department the head of the district, and then moved over to the FOIA office, to the Freedom of Information Act office, was at the Freedom of Information Act office. April would submit her request and wouldn't get information back, or would get no results. In the most outrageous one, when they were just filing the FOIA request with the police, the police told her she has no results. Like, we searched our computers, we did a search, and we didn't get anything. And April was like, this is not possible. So that's when she took it to court. And then the morning of court, they came back and they said, well, we actually have 3,000 something documents. And they said, what happened? How did you go from 0 to 3,000? Well, we made a mistake when we did our search. We forgot to include terms. Well, what term did you forget? We forgot to include the term April Goggans. So they were searching for information on April Goggans, and they didn't include in the search. So you can see the level of absurdity. So after this woman retires, what is her name? Vendetta?
Vendetta
Vendetta,
right? Vendetta.
Yeah, Floridian slip. Vendetta Parker retires. She then and the people are complaining to her about it, and others. She whistleblows and she calls up some people, and somehow a public defender gets this information that there is this list of people who the FOIA officers are told don't give information to or make it difficult. And one of them on this list is a public defender. And this public defender is having trouble getting the documents about her clients. They want to find out, for part of her legal preparation, is my client being spied on? Maybe the police know that he's innocent or she's innocent, but they're not saying anything because they're covering us. So she's doing these requests for her clients, and she's not getting information back. And suddenly she gets a note from the FOIA officer saying, you know what, we're actually intentionally slowing you down because the police chief gave us a list of people. So there's a list of people inside of MPD who the FOIA officers are told, if this person requests information, don't give it to them. Slow it down, charge them $5,000, or don't give them anything at all. And there are specific in this data dump, there were actually some emails about that, saying, for example, saying, if this person requested some information, don't give it to them, don't say anything, let them follow up by themselves. They don't follow up, don't say anything, which is illegal. They're supposed to follow up on every request, and then if they do follow up, then slow it down. So that is that's the enemies list. So there's a list somewhere saying that even though you have a legal right to these documents, if you're on this list, we're not going to give them to you because we don't like your political positions, or we don't like what you're using the information, the public information, the way in which you're using the public information.
And I just wanted to say about PDS, or Public Defender Services, is that, so I did learn this weekend that they are also, I'm not sure if they joined a lawsuit or have their own, because when they are defending clients, they're getting the same stonewall on things that they are legally supposed to get for their clients. And so, and for folks who don't know, all of this stuff is connected, but PDS legally has the ability to use officers' history, behavior, those things for their cases, which is huge, because what I know is that when I'm on the block with the guys we work with, they know these officers. Most Karan Brown, Dion K, those folks who were killed by MPD, those officers knew them. They regularly harassed them. And so there is that precedence where you're like, these are targeted murders by the police, that they're not even getting that information. That the information that should be right there. I mean, PDS is the government. I'm just saying, but they have been incredibly vocal against MPD's tactics, all of that. So yeah, I mean, I thought that was interesting. It'll be interesting to see how these other lawsuits shake out. I don't know too much about them. I do know that Vendette was like, nah, to April.
Yeah, and by the way, Emma raises a point here that occurred as well, that obviously these are tactics to distract the work, to put a slowdown on the efforts that BLM-DC, PACA, others are doing. So as we sort of turn towards the last, segment for this morning, or whatever, I did want us to talk a little bit about what you have here in terms of community control of the police, and maybe talk about PACA's, BLM-DC's approach to this topic, and then anything else you all are doing that you want to share with us and remind us about. And of course, both of you, your organizations are always welcome here anytime. But when you call for community control of the police, how does this fit into what's going on with this specific issue?
Let me start by outlining why I think this case, April's case, is really important. So she made a request to get information that she's legally entitled to, and they're denying and stonewalling her request, and now she's taking it to court to get the information. This is could be some random run-of-the-mill court case. I think this is really important for a few reasons. Number one is that because of her political positions and specifically her organizing around those positions, the government is spying on her. And knowing what we know about spying on a black woman who was saying things like, don't shoot black people, don't murder black people, and knowing what we know about COINTELPRO, the question then becomes, what else are they doing? Okay, we know they're spying, and my guess is that in some of those documents that they're not giving over to April, they're giving other information, such as informant number one was at the meeting and slowed things down by saying this or saying that. So we don't know what else they're doing, but the point is that because of this organizing work, they are actively spying on, they're intimidating people who are leaving meetings that April attends. They are trying to keep her from engaging in this organizing by demonstrating to her that they can shut off her phone at any time. They could all these other things. So that's one. The second thing is that she's making requests that she's legally entitled to, and they're denying her those requests. They're denying her things that she has full access to, that she has the right to. And the third and related thing is that for these two things that they're doing that are breaking the law and violating our rights, there are apparently no consequences to be paid. No one is being punished for it. So what are we going to do? Our assertion at PACA, Pan-African Community Action, is that the way to fix this problem with the police department is not to try to fix the police department, because the police department is just doing what they're being told to do by the political powers. The reality is that the police department is just the armed wing of the overall system, and we can't fix the armed wing of the system because they're just following orders. Like, as we've heard historically about other armed wings of other oppressive systems. What we need to have happen is we need to be in charge of our own enforcement wing of the system, of our system, not to only be subject to their wing. We can't fix the police because all they're doing is following the orders that they're being given. We need to be in control of our own forces. We need to be in control of the forces, not just the police. We need to be in control of the land on which we sit. We need to be in control over the educational system, which educates our children, and we need to be in control over the systems of compliance, over the systems that are used to make sure that people are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing and have this type of power over us. We can't do that by trying to fix the police department. We can only do that by having community control over those sectors of our lives that make a difference.
Mm.
Leave it to Max to just totally change my entire thought process in a matter of 2.5 minutes. No, it's not that BLM, it's one of those things that I try to be very intentional about what I say is like a BLM stance if we haven't talked about it, right? Like, I'm gonna be real, that's what
same with PACA.
Right.
There's a bunch of stuff that I can't say because we haven't discussed it. This is good organizing. This is good organizing, because you can't just go out and say whatever you want. You have to, the organization determines everything.
Absolutely.
It's weird to hear that in this moment. I will admit, I feel like everybody's just running to the first camera and microphone they can find to be like, I think that we yeah, anyway, sorry, April, go ahead.
No, that's okay, because then they go right back and do what they do. But so yeah, and I do want to, let me take this moment to say that as soon as PACA learned that I was having a hearing, Max was like, oh yeah, we got you. PACA got you. Nothing's hitting me up. They're like, we got you. They put all of this out. I just want to be very clear that this is like how solidarity works. I have been a fan of PACA since day one. And I say fan means like, when you think of organizations that we want to be, that we want to organize like, and nobody's perfect, but there's a basic understanding of principle and practice that I think we can all learn by. And this was like probably the most, but I think about this kind of organizing, I think this is the kind of organizing that brings this kind of a case to the forefront and truly makes it not just about me, but about all activists, organizers, is because we come together and realize like, hey, and PACA is in those documents. They're in those documents with me, you know, because we were at protests together. They don't know what Pan-Africanism is. I think they was a little confused. But so, you know, for me, I'm an anarchist. So for me, I'd be talking about control over police, right? But I mean, it's the same thing, you know, Max and we talk, right? And the fact is that I just don't even want to deal with the police, right? And a lot of that is just, I spent a lot of years, not necessarily trying to reform, but like, how do we move within this space? And, you know, have, you know, some things to heal from maybe. But, you know, right now, what I'm thinking is we're doing the mutual aid. We're getting ready to do, you know, community defense, which is around knowing your rights, which is around, you know, cop watch, different political education. Shout out to Max, who's got a whole program. But, you know, and to me, I'm just like, let's just build outside the system, out the system. I hear community control of the police. And I'm just like, but it's the same thing we talk about with community control and surveillance, right? There's a whole campaign here where it's just like, y'all are using it. We want y'all to have to be able to say what you're using. And then we want the public to be able to be like, nah, we don't want our money going to stingrays or whatnot. But, you know, in all of that, I say that, you know, my demands are exactly the same. Those are, I mean, PACA came up with them, but because they're exactly what we need. And I say we, as in the movement, Black people, is to call people out and just say, stop, like, don't do this. You're doing this. And it's not because we want to, you know, uphold the Constitution, which I feel like sometimes people are like, why are you even talking about your rights? It's because that is the same doctrine that they use to justify all of these things. So if they're going to use the Constitution, they're going to use the law and what's legal to criminalize, brutalize, murder, surveil us, well, then they're going to have to be 10 toes down about it. Like, this is what you're doing. You know, either do all of it or don't stop me when I'm walking across the street, not at a light, right? Like, it's very hard for me to take you serious, which I never will take them serious. But, you know, as a system, we can't take serious a system that gets to pick and choose which parts of the law they abide by, and who gets to use those same laws to protect themselves. And so, yeah, you know, it's about that. It's about highlighting the contradictions. Like, people in DC are asking for more police. And I'm like, that means you have to be clear that you are accepting what happens to the rest of us, right? You're accepting that asking for more police means that you're saying there are more police in our neighborhoods to surveil, put our babies on this gang database, to, you know, these tickets that are giving, you know, over here only in Southeast, traffic tickets giving you, you know, $1,000 for speeding, only in Southeast. These things are, they depend on our dependency on the state and our dependency on the police. And that's why we're really trying to get out this story, because people aren't thinking about these things, right? People aren't thinking about the impact of relying on the police, right? People are voting for this election here. I mean, if your Black vote counts because you're a Democrat. But, you know, people are voting, and these are the people who are deciding how this stuff works. And if you're only a one issue, you know, quote unquote voter, then you miss everything. And that's what they depend on. They depend on us being so focused on one thing that we think makes our household safer than the next, that we end up putting all of us in danger.
Wow. So just again, want to, just as we get ready to wrap up here this morning, I want to reiterate again that both of you and your associated organizations and comrades are always welcome. And that we want to remind everybody, the link to this story is in the show description already. And at the bottom of that story is the direct link that everybody can join to support tomorrow at 9:30 the hearing around April surveillance, the surveillance of April Goggans. The link is here. We are going to endeavor to broadcast on our part that as part of the Remix Morning Show tomorrow morning.
Please let us know. We'll change the link. We want to send people here. We need the analysis along with watching it. So please let us know.
Oh, word. Okay. Well, okay. All right. I'm on that. I will follow up on that immediately and follow
I'll be right here too.
And get you on it. All right, right on. Appreciate that. So beyond that, any other final comments or thoughts for this morning before we do unfortunately wrap up? Anything else going on that you want to alert us to? There was a question, I know, April, at some point earlier. Sorry, Max, about the relationship of BLM-DC to BLM more broadly. Again, I don't know, how much time we have for that, and I want to encourage people to check the previous visits of April and BLM-10. We're always but anyway, anybody
I'll say
want
quickly, absolutely not. We are part of the BLM-10, BLM-10 Plus. You can go to, I think it's blmchapterstatement.com. We came out against all of this craziness. They have never actually represented our political or, views. People stop donating to them. Either donate to a local organization, start your own. If you're in DC, you can donate to us, because I will say that this has taken all of that away. But no, absolutely, absolutely not.
You haven't been invited out to that workspace mansion or whatever they call it?
I'm not a cool kid. I'm not a cool kid. So no. They probably have a sign that's like, not her. Nope.
Not her. Oh man, they're on the do not invite list. By the way, I have one of those, not to be morbid about it, but I have one of those for my wife for my funeral one day. I do not invite. I don't want no fraudulent guests showing up talking about.
I have a list.
Oh, yeah. So if they show up, she gonna have it right at the door. Nah. You didn't rock with him when he was here.
Exactly. My brother knows the list.
Hey, you know what I mean? Because you show up at people's funerals, it'd be a lot of fake tears and like, oh, now you sad? Like, stop playing. It's like, stop it. Anyway. Anyway.
Be like those march videos when people are like, I did march with King. King did not know.
Exactly. Like my godfather says all the time, if everybody who claims to have been on the Edmund Pettus Bridge was there, it would have collapsed. So stop fronting like you was out there with April. Stop fronting. Anyway, Max, my bad. I cut you off, man. Go ahead.
No, it's good. Yeah. It's good. It's good. This is a good. Now I got another list to work on. By the way, I'm inspired by you. Now I gotta.
It's fun to mess with. It's fun. It's fun to update.
So let me say a couple things. We talk in abstract terms about defending Black women. Here is a concrete, real term. A concrete real time when you have the government who is bringing its forces down on a Black woman, and not just a random Black woman, or not just to make their quota, because they do that. But this is here an instance of a Black woman who is mobilizing and organizing communities against government oppression, against gentrification in our communities, and against all kinds of oppression, exploitation that's happening and directed towards us. This is important for PACA, not only because April is our comrade, but because as soon as they are done and run her out of the movement, they're going to turn their sights to someone else, and we might be the next. As much as this is a solidarity campaign, this is also a self-interest campaign, because we want to make sure that this doesn't happen to us. And I would argue that anyone who is up at 8 o'clock in the morning or watching this show, even watching it later, government agents accepted, could be on one of these lists, and you have a self-interest in making sure that this doesn't happen. This is a court hearing. If you look at the flyer, it shows this is the Court of Appeals. It's the Court of Appeals because after the government said we don't have any documents, and then, oh yeah, we found 3,000, and then, oh yeah, we found 9,000, they got the case dismissed, saying that, okay, you did a search, okay, you can have it. So, and this is an appeal of that to try to get her hands on the documents. This is and as April already mentioned, we don't expect anything to come out of this in a real sense, because the government is not accountable to us, and it's not going to be accountable through this way. This could resolve this case. They could say, okay, you got to give her the documents, but it won't do that in a broader sense. The only way that that's going to happen is when we are in control of those forces. And right now, we didn't go running to our local corporate-owned news channel begging them to cover this story. We came to community-controlled media. We came to Black Power Media and said, this is where we want to have this story told, and it's being told here. So we have community-controlled media, and that's where we're coming. We need the same with community-controlled education, community-controlled land and housing, and ultimately we need security forces, public safety forces, over which we have community control.
Well said. Right on. Hey, look, we've showed up in courtrooms to support people when, to show solidarity from the community. Tomorrow is a much easier way to do it by just clicking a link. And we will, we're already working in the background to set this up with the remix. So stay tuned. I'll be, be in touch with you all offline afterwards to share the links and et cetera and so forth. And April, we just again appreciate your work and the continued example you show, and we all want to continue to support you and your comrades. So thank you very much, and appreciate you both coming through this morning to alert us, and we'll be watching tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, April, for all your work.
Right on. All right, take care, April and Max. Big shout out to them, PACA, BLM-DC. And the distinction that they're drawing. Anyway, so a lot more coming up. Sort of the digital currency version of this surveillance nonsense that we've been just talking about here. So let's just take a quick pause and transition and come right back and get into this crypto colonialism with Sebs Solomon. Don't go anywhere. Much more coming up here at I Mix What I Like in Black Power Media.
Let me show these suckers how to ball out here. Oh man, let me get this together here. Oh, layup. Oh no. Shot. Oh, three. Oh, it's like Brick City out here. Mid-range. Oh my goodness, I can't buy a bucket out here. I missed the whole damn basket. Oh my goodness. What's going on, man? My game is looking trash. Oh, here we go. Black Power Media shirt. Now we cooking. Tree. I'm taking all three of y'all with these right here. Between the legs. Oh my goodness. Behind the back. Layup. Oh, did he just do a reverse? He is in beast mode out here. I ain't gotta look. It's falling. Oh my goodness. This guy is going 3, 2, 1. Kobe. Nice. Black Power Media, baby. Nice. Empower yourself. Go get you some of that Black Power Media again. Right here, blackpowermedia.org. Yeah.
I mix what I like. All right, everybody, welcome back again to I Mix What I Like here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, very happy to be your host and to be joined by our next guest, who's back with us again, Sebs Solomon, who, among many other things, is an independent observer of phenomenons around the world. She regularly posts her writing on her Medium blog, Gnomes for Truth, where you can find anything from her analysis of the harm caused by AFRICOM to a breakdown on the narrative and psychological warfare being waged on all human beings. She also has a YouTube channel called Doom and Gloom, with her friend, and my bad. I was trying to think of a quick joke just about what is supposed to be my pessimism, and her show is called Doom and Gloom, with her friend and research partner Ali Alexandra, where they discuss a wide variety of topics from a lens grounded in genuine honesty and clarity, which she definitely brings to her latest piece on crypto colonialism. Sebs, good morning to you. Welcome back to the program. It's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you too. Thank you for having me back on.
No, I mean, it's a pleasure, and I now can't wait. Honestly, I didn't know until I finished reading this article that you were doing Doom and Gloom, so now I have to add that to my media diet and get caught up there. So congratulations on that. I look forward to that. But this piece here, again, as I said, like the great Grady used to say, goop, goobly goop. Boy, I tell you, I mean, again, if there was anything left, I don't know how I put it earlier, to this rotting carcass of cryptoganda and belief that cryptocurrency can save the world, you have certainly destroyed any last remnants of it. Let me let you just get started with and give us an overview. I have a ton of questions. I think there's a lot to lay out here, but your piece here, French imperialism versus crypto colonialism, the Central African Republic experiment. I'll just read this first graph here. The Central African Republic recently added Bitcoin as a legal currency, tokenized natural resources, and even created a cryptocurrency economic zone called Sango, following the footsteps of El Salvador. The Central African Republic is still using its French currency CFA franc, just like El Salvador is still using the American dollar. In addition to the crypto economic zones, CAR is also offering an e-residency and citizenship by investment programs with zero rate tax on income and businesses that are all being implemented to attract investors. The El Salvador game plan. All sounds good. So what could be wrong with this? The Central African Republic is going to lead the way to a new freedom for us. What's the problem?
Well, I mean, like, the most glaring thing for me is the fact that it is a French, part of the French community, part of the French Empire. That's the first country that's doing that in Africa. There is a significance in that, because it kind of shows you like what really has a stronghold in that area, and like where we're headed, and maybe like what else we need to watch as far as like, what the hell France is doing, especially in relation to what's happening in Central and West Africa, because they do have quite a stronghold. And the Chinese even know that, because they work very closely with France because of the language barrier and stuff. So the French banks like Societe Generale, right, SocGen, it's I think like the second biggest private bank in France, is also working with China as well to do a lot of this, like putting the supply chain on blockchain, right? Or putting the minerals on blockchain in order to like extract more conveniently. And we know what the French have always done in Africa specifically, not talked about as much, right? Because they have this reputation, and I think deliberately, of like, they don't like to fight, they run away. The French are not aggressive. They just want to eat croissants and pastries and, make love or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just, they have this like reputation, but it's like, they're highly militaristic. They have all nuclear power for a reason, right? Like whatever they're doing in Niger or, Chad and what have you. So we have to pay attention to that. In addition to their relationship, like with Mossad and Israel and China, and just like that whole apparatus, like that network needs to be put under a microscope and, looked at for what it is and not what you want it to be.
So everyone will have to forgive.
I said a lot. Sorry.
No. You've said no. We're going to come back to that, but Leah brings up a very important point, so I have to take this quick digression because Leah suspects that you might not have even known who Grady is. This is kind of an old reference. Sometimes I forget, so I just want to shout out Grady from Sanford and Son. This is him here. Anyway, so that's it. Just a character from one of my favorite TV shows, Whitman Mayo, I believe. Yeah, that's right. That's right. His name, the actor's name. But anyway, and he used to say goop goobly goop. So anyway,
I do know Sanford and Son.
Okay,
I like some old shows. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah. Old for you. I grew up.
Not calling you old. I was actually going to follow up.
No. It is. No, I am old at this point. I've crossed into old, and that's fine. But Having cleared up that important point.
Yes, I just want you to lay that groundwork as far as like France and its importance. Yeah.
There's so much to this piece that you've written here, and again, it's linked in the show description, and so people have got to read it. I'm going to have to read it again at least one more time, if not several more times, to cover to even begin to grasp all that you've outlined here, and beyond that, even gone into some depth about. But one of the issues that, I mean, just even in the beginning, from what I read, you're talking about. All right, so on the one hand, there's this claim that cryptocurrency is going to allow people previously poor to engage in the global economic system in new ways, and at minimum and at best actually overturn, centuries of inequality, and not just individually but collectively. So we're hearing that in terms of Black America getting into cryptocurrency and catching up to white folks. We're now seeing it being said that this is going to happen at the national level with El Salvador, and then here with the Central African Republic. But as you point out, there's a reason why these developing countries, newly emergent, or whatever the new terminology is today, countries, why they are the starting point for all of this. And even in this first graph where you're talking about e-residencies and citizenship by investment, and zero tax rates on income and business. And then the big point that I know you come back to, tokenizing natural resources.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost so big. I almost just feel like we should just sit here and read the whole article. But I mean, all right. So just, talk to us a little bit about, let's start here with where we are with the Central African Republic and Sango. And even this point that you have here in the next graph about if only 7% of the country is even using the internet now, how is this crypto thing going to come in and revolutionize their material conditions?
It doesn't make sense, right? And then the World Bank also is the one that's setting up this infrastructure for like the Central African backbone, right? Which I referenced to, which reminded me of like the upstream NSA backbone, right? Where they were doing all of the aggregating of, they play word games like that. Like that's intentional, that's not a coincidence. Like the World Bank knows what the backbone refers to when you're speaking about fiber optics and, those cables and things. So,
which if I understood you and understood that, is just permanent access despite claims of anonymity and encryption and all that. It just means that the NSA is saying we're here from the beginning.
And they have a fusion center in Ghana. They opened the first American fusion center opened or was built in Ghana, created with the help of the FBI and like the DEA and stuff, which is like, okay, in Ghana to help them with their border security. So it's just, they have these fusion center things that are, like invested in by like Amazon and like Berkshire, what is it? The
Hathaway.
Warren Buffett. Yeah,
Warren
Hathaway.
Buffett, yeah.
It's like it's a lot, but it's just being marketed as something else, as like this decentralized form of something else. But to kind of go back to what I was saying about the infrastructure. So the World Bank is the one that's building this Central African backbone, right? So they're building the infrastructure that all this stuff is going to be layered on, or it's going to be used for. And then they go ahead and say, oh, but we're not doing all this stuff because look, it's not because we support crypto. Like, that's not why we're doing this. Then it's like, well, why would you build the infrastructure? That doesn't make any sense. Because if it's going to be used for something else that you don't approve of, just, playing that good cop, bad cop, like, IMF representing the Europe and then the World Bank representing the US, and kind of like playing that little game, with us lessers. That's kind of what it feels like. It's like, I'm not trying to be, like these elites, but it's more just, no, it's like this bureaucracy that was created by a very specific structure with a certain intention. And it's playing out. So it's just hard to deny. But yeah, so they go ahead and they're like, oh no, we don't support the Sango project. Like, that's not what this money is for. It's for digital governance. But it's like, how is the digital governance going to run aside from something like this, right? You're going to have your medical records on blockchain, your money, your genomics, like your jobs, your education, like everything. And then you call that, even though you're centralizing all that, you sell it as decentralized. So it just doesn't make sense.
So I want you to walk us through this Sango project, but before we
Yes.
even get to that, I do want to this point you raised even earlier again of citizenship by investment programs, because Sango, the project, sits on top of already existing colonial relationships where as I'm reading your article, it's like these former colonies are more or less having to lay prostrate before the imperialists to say, given the conditions in as a result of colonialism, we now need whatever you can now come back and humbly offer us. So if to raise resources, I'm assuming is part of the claim here, but that allow you can get a form of citizenship through your investment in the country. Could you talk a little bit about that context again, and then we can plug Sango into it?
Yes. So citizenship by investment is basically that's reserved for people who have money, right? It's normally reserved for people who are investors or in the investor class, right? So if they want to like have rights to like certain mines or projects or whatever, they would have to invest a certain amount in order to be granted that like those special privileges by getting that like citizenship by investment. So it's essentially like you're just buying they already do this. They're just calling it something else. But a lot of different countries that do already do this, like Malta, we know what's going on over there. Grenada, and it's got like these random islands in the Caribbean that have these citizenship by investment. So it's these very controlled like entities that normally offer this type of program, and now the Central African Republic has joined their ranks. So
and then as you say here, the adoption of Bitcoin is more of a geopolitical or performative move than it is economic. And I do find it alarming that these experiments are being piloted in countries that are reported to have some of the lowest standards of living or large populations of displaced people, and you describe it as predatory. So that's I just wanted to
I want to. That's an important point to bring up because that like I do find it alarming that they're doing that, because you look at El Salvador and that's kind of what they're doing as far as like this crypto island thing, and we know like Bukele is I don't know who can say nice things about this man. Like he just does not seem very nice and very aggressive. He's turned El Salvador into a police state but a crypto haven. Like, oh, they all can feel safe because I'm going to lock everybody up because everybody's a gang member. So I'm not saying that there's not a problem. It's just.
And spoiler alert, it's not being adopted in El Salvador. Nobody's wealth is increasing, material inequality is not decreasing, so on and so forth. So
exactly, but they don't have these like foundations that the legacy systems already have, right? Like they don't have like the banking system or like that payment infrastructure that these other developed countries already have. So they pilot these types of programs in places where it's just kind of like a tabula rasa, right? Or a tabula, what is it called? A blank slate.
Tabula rasa, blank slate,
exactly. So they can,
and that's a point you raised very clear. I mean, very well in this piece that rather than having to tear down an existing structure, there is none in these countries, so they can just build from scratch.
Exactly.
So I just use that to preface your look at Sango. So could you let's come back and tell us what Sango is, and then describe what this legal framework you've got drafted.
So their legal framework is laid out in their own website, and it talks about the e-residency program, like we talked about, which is basically like digital governance. The zero taxes, right, for corporate or for income. The digital ownership as well, and digital identity, both recognized by the government, right? So you've got your digital ID or your little portal, and then as well as they're opening a digital bank, like a bank of digital. I forgot exactly what it was called, but it's basically like a bank for crypto, a crypto bank, basically, or a crypto digital assets bank. So they're doing all that. And basically, their website also lists like 3 different objectives, right? And you would think like, okay, they're going to list objectives that have to do with like helping people, because this is supposed to be like all about tackling poverty, raising people up. But their 3 objectives. Number 1 was building a crypto hub at the heart of Africa that will be like recognized by the country's government that welcomes business practices that attract global crypto enthusiasts. So that's their number one like objective per their own website. Number two was taking Bitcoin, the Bitcoin legacy to the next level. And then number three was Sango, the crypto island. So I'm just like, what does this have to do with like anything? Like,
no, this is pretty
all.
explicit. This one, number two was my favorite because it's pretty explicitly saying that there, you know, in addition to what you've already outlined in terms of the zero corporate tax rate, you know, citizenship by investment and all that, they're saying, look, if you've already, if you're one of the, what is it, 1% that own 20% of all Bitcoin or whatever it is, something like that. If you're in that class, then when Bitcoin goes to the next level, you make more money. I mean, that's how I read. So it's like it's a straight 1% ad. And then you reference my favorite guy here, Max Kaiser, who said that if Black people had invested in crypto, in Bitcoin in 2011, we would own white America by now. I think he said something like that, something crazy like that. Anyway,
so that's a crazy shit.
Yeah,
It's so irritating. I swear, him and Stacey, Lord, it's like
him and who?
Stacey, like
Oh
his
yeah,
wife.
Yeah,
it's just.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, I didn't know they were. Yeah, I don't
oh,
know
I
what
don't.
level
I'm sorry.
of
I don't want to
partnership they've
infer.
reached. Yeah, I don't know what level of
But,
partnership they've
yeah.
reached, but it would be, yeah, it would make sense if they were. But
yeah, it's just
anyway.
they're insufferable, to be honest. They act like they're like bringing liberation. It's like, you look ridiculous. Like, this is absolute insanity. And even if you hear like some of the way that they just talk about like the past, right, like, or the Renaissance, and just it's very it's adhering, or like, you know, it's within the paradigms of like a certain established, right, just set of or premise that they,
you know, it's crossed my mind to you know, to do a sort of a specific kind of critique of Max. I just don't want to put that much effort into him because, you know, he does present himself, particularly, you know, he branded himself as being that ex-Wall Street guy that's now going to tell the people how to get over. You know, that's sort of how he branded himself from the beginning. And I think it's why a lot of people, particularly Black people, continue to reference him as a source for like an alternative economist. And then, you know, his craze over Bitcoin, I'm sure is well funded.
Very well funded. I mean, he's got well sponsored. He's well connected too. So it is what it is. But
it is what it is. But this part, you mentioned this already, but this part here, I thought, again, when you talked about the backbone, when I read the Surveillance Literacy book, or no, Surveillance Valley book rather, and I forgot the author's name all of a sudden.
Sasha Levine. Right.
That's it. But when he talks about how basically the NSA has been involved in the Tor network and all of this stuff from the beginning, and all of these people that are running around here talking about the safe space from government surveillance have you know, if I remember correctly, one of the points he was making was that there was no need for them to create a back door. They were already always in, something to that effect. And that sounds like what you're saying here as part of this backbone being created for the Central African Republic. So when you say here the Central African backbone, made me think about the NSA's upstream surveillance, which took place on the internet backbone, which is the network of high capacity cable switches and routers that carry Americans' domestic and international internet communications. Could you elaborate here for us what you're saying here about all of this?
Yeah, so I'm just kind of making the connection to, like, I guess the Snowden leaks, or, you know, what have you, where, or in the Surveillance Valley, like you were talking about, Sasha Levine, where they talked about these like back doors, or like, you know, you don't need a back door because they're always in. They have like a little central hub where they, like, all the information has to pass through. So, like, you know, it's there, right? It's like the black box essentially of the internet. So it kind of, the fact that they called it the Central African backbone kind of made me feel like, okay, like this has to be intentional. Like, why? Because why would they call it that unless, like, you know, there was something, there's like some sort of like symbolism there where it's like, okay, like, so this is going to be where all that. And then it also makes sense, like, in that area, because that's where they're getting like most of the resources and stuff, like the minerals for like their, you know, semiconductor chips and everything that has to do with like batteries, green technology, all of that is coming like right from over there, which is why like even China their 40% of their businesses, like in their firms, are in Africa. 40% of their entire economy is based in Africa, which is pretty significant. Like,
wow.
I
I
read that on a McKinsey paper recently, and I'm like, I was actually writing something about it because it was like, whoa, that's because that means that's the world, right? Like that's that's a lot. So yeah,
and that's funny because I'm writing something that involves looking at McKinsey. Because McKinsey, who is out here advising the world on how to turn themselves over to the corporate elite, is also producing a lot of becoming one of the largest proponents of black buying power. This idea that black people have all this money that they're misusing, and needs to be captured by anyway. But so they're
ridiculous. Can I just say one thing?
The role
about
they're playing, yeah.
There was another paper that I was reading, and it was about like the Africa's relationship with China, and they literally titled it like "The Dance of the Lion and the Dragon." Like, I'm like,
oh God,
oh no! It was like the dragon has landed on Africa, and I'm like, is this a real like act? Like, is this?
Oh
a paper?
wow!
Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's it had like
please
a dragon
do.
and a lion. I'm like, what am I reading? Like, is this an economic paper? Like,
but the 40% piece is deep. Or no, right? It's like a Lion King. They just finished watching Lion King and Kung Fu Panda, and then they started like let's title our report.
The Dance of the Lion and the Dragon. Okay. Yeah.
No, but it's perfect because I mean, from their perspective, what they're dealing with are just toys and playgrounds and resources, and so why not have fun with it? Anyway, so in other words, the marketing that might be being used to help people of the Central African Republic accept all of this, because this becomes a component of what you're talking about in this essay, the marketing of it, of again, decentralization, encryption, privacy, wealth creation, entrance into banking and the global economy in new ways, and overturning, in revolution and freedom and all this language that's being used. Equity, right, is clearly part of, as you describe it here, the astroturfing effect, so to speak. So could you talk a little bit about, as you do here, Alex Gladstein and his role in this, and how all of that, he plays in the astroturfing plays in this,
So Alex Gladstein, I'm glad you brought this one up too, because he is he's actually done a show with Glenn Greenwald as well about crypto. Yeah, I know. I roll. I like just the biggest eye roll, because it is milk toast, lukewarm, just makes perfect sense. I know,
but perfect for Glenn. I mean, because what you say here about Alex, actually, that makes sense. I mean, this is perfect for the Glens of the world. So that's deep, though. It's
so deep. Yeah, I'm like, wow. And he's the first person that he brought on to talk about about crypto, because he's like, oh, what is this crypto? Like, I don't. So I brought in this expert, Alex Gladstein. I'm like, Human Rights Foundation, Singularity University, Oslo Freedom Forum. You know what I mean? Like,
oh my God. So I didn't know what you meant until I read this. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have known all that about Alex before reading what you have here. But so it just makes perfect sense, because it's again, the astroturfing, which is such, again, all of this is just perfect for the moment, whether it's Glenn or YouTube in general or whatever. It's just perfect for that. So please break this down for us, and why this guy is such a good representation of the problem.
Yes, he is. He encompasses everything. He is, just like one of the best examples of this, because, God, I don't want to say. I'm sure he's a lovely person. Whatever. Whatever.
I'm sure his mother loves him.
Right. I'm sure his mother loves him. So he's the chief strategist of the Human Rights Watch, or Human Rights Foundation, faculty at the Singularity University, right? And then he also serves as like the vice president or since its inception of the Oslo Freedom Forums. So very, very much like in the neoliberal like world order type thing, but like fighting the neoliberal world order from, you know, station, but while being paid by those folks. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I understand there's a lot of people who disagree. You know, I'm not like, it's just more what he uses all of that analysis to do that pisses me off. So so he works also to connect dissidents and civil society groups with business leaders, technologists, like, you know, philanthropists, policymakers, journalists, all that, like artists, of course, and then to promote like these open societies, right? Like these civil societies, and a lot of these civil societies kind of come out of that, like Civil Society 2.0, Hillary Clinton, you know, like Arab Spring type. When we're talking about the global South specifically, as far as how that works. Not to say that there aren't people in those, you know, organizations that mean well. Actually, most of them probably do, but it's just what they're working for in the larger part, in my opinion, right? So he basically takes a lot of like these critiques that most people would call like, you know, leftist critiques, or like, you know, against colonialism or imperialism. So they're pretty obvious. They don't even have to be leftist. Like, to me, it's like, this is pretty obvious, you know, like these are these are.
I mean, you have him in here. He's talking about fighting monetary colonialism
Yes.
with cryptocurrency. I mean, I read that. I was like, you motherfucker, how dare you co-opt that language?
How dare you? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's that astroturfing. Like, that's why it's so annoying, because they take like these legitimate criticisms, like these really important like topics, and then they use it to like push their own agenda, as far as like, oh, okay, like I have a solution for you. It's going to be this decentralized finance, like Crptopia. You know, here, I wrapped it up in a bow, like, take it, you know, it's for you. I'll make an NFT. Like, you want to mint it? Like, it's that's just like that's the vibe I get, like, from these people. And they do the same thing. It's like they follow the same template, because they'll talk about, like, you know, the CFA franc, and, you know, the franc Afrique, and like just all the exploitation, and how people have been wronged, and blah blah blah. But then it's always like within this very particular paradigm, and it's like, it's very much, it just reminded me of that, like Cass Sunstein, like cognitive infiltration type of thing, because, you know, a lot of those people,
that was my next, that's what you got to talk about that, because that was my next, I was like, this is deep. So yeah, talk about this, the point you talk when you bring in your, you know, the discussion of cognitive infiltration.
Sure.
Yeah,
with Alex Gladstein.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I brought that up because it reminds me of that cognitive infiltration concept that Cass Sunstein, Obama guy, you know, coined, which is talking about infiltrating groups that they consider to be like conspiracy theorists, right? Or like these alternative, the alternative history folks, or the people who want to like critically think about things and, you know, come to their own conclusion. How dare they congregate and have conversations? So the best thing for them to do, as far as like to quell these people's like suspicion of the government, is to get the government to infiltrate them. So it's like, in order
to make you feel more comfortable about what we're doing, we're just going to sneak and infiltrate, and then kind of incept you, like, you know, like inception you, and infiltrate and cognitively infiltrate you. I mean, even the language, but we're doing this because we're right and we want you to trust us. And as you said, I worked with Obama, so therefore it must be a good policy and plan. It must be a good idea, because it comes out of the Obama camp. That is, so we just finished, I mean, in the first half of the show today, we're talking about, you know, modern versions of the counterintelligence program on activists. And then here is like, again, that's why I said in the transition, we're going to be looking in this hour with you at the sort of digital version of it, that in the digital currency or crypto version of it. So what you're describing here is, well, as you say here, that the proposal is that government officials infiltrate groups and organizations who engage in conspiracies in order to undermine the crippled epistemology of believers by planting doubts about the theories. Oh man, that is fantastic. So this is part of the, and if I'm remembering or read it correctly, what you're saying here, this is part of the process of convincing people of their need to adopt cryptocurrency.
Yes.
So it's don't look while my stock prices go up and my wallet gets bigger. Don't pay attention to that, because we're just helping you. You know, oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, come back to this, because you also talk here about, and you come back to explain this point about transparency does not mean accountability,
Yes.
which I think is very important.
It does
But I
not.
did want you to, just one more point about this cognitive infiltration. He seems to be, as you write here, Alex Gladstein seems to just repeat the leftist critique of imperialism in the global South, and then proceeds to offer the libertarian decentralized finance through blockchain and crypto solution to unsuspecting viewers and listeners who may not pick up on his crypto bro talking points and establishment gatekeeping.
Mhm.
Could you just say a word or two about what you mean, or why, when they claim decentralization is a good thing and is going to happen through crypto, that why that's false, and how that's playing out in the example you've written about here?
Mhm. Oh, because it has, like, decentralization or centralization, like, either can work. It's more of like who would be facilitating all of this, right? Like, who would it be working for, right? So if you have like good people in government and stuff, and like people function normally, yeah, sure, decentralization or centralization, like, it could all essentially work because you're going to be the one deciding. But in the current structure, in the current reality in which we live, like, where we see what's happening as far as, like, I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but it's like it's the corruption runs amok, unchecked all the time. So it's like, you don't think that that's going to be like either going to be exacerbated or just exactly the same, like, with decentralizing it, because then you're decentralizing a very corrupt, like, just entity, or several very corrupt entities. You're decentralizing them, so like they're not just going to be like in one place or two places anymore. They'll literally be everywhere, but like marketed as like something different. So it's very insidious, and creepy, and you almost have to be like a couple steps ahead to like understand it. And I'm not saying I understand everything. I could have several missing pieces, and I would love to know, right? So it's just, yeah. So that's just kind of what
I just want to that point you just made. You say here, I believe they are just changing tactics and focusing on decentralizing in order to fit in with the latest buzzwords that are centered around solutions to superficial problems, and then preach liberation through decentralized finance, or DeFi, as they keep saying to me, wanting to throw that like cute little. I don't believe that these institutions are going anywhere. They are actually going everywhere, because they will be decentralized. And as in the note I wrote to myself here, it was like, wasn't Agent Smith centralized? like in the Matrix, like he was the centralized authority that was everywhere.
Mm-hmm. They had Oracle too in the Matrix, and they have Oracles on blockchain. Mm-hmm.
That's
they do.
So anyway, I just thought that was look. Yeah. So I'm trying to just be mindful of our time here, because there's so much that you got into. I'm going to, at least for now, because I hate to. You can obviously bring us to any part of your article here that you'd like, but for now, I'm going to ask us to pass over the section on this where you get into the French Henry Kissinger, which is it's fascinating, but I don't. There's so much going on there.
There's a lot going on. Yeah, I just added that in there to add, like, to like show that what, just to demonstrate some of what the French colonialism entailed, and how it never actually left. So that was the moral of that.
And the details. This is why, again, the link to the story is in the show description. The article, that is, people have got to. Again, it's going to take more than one reading. There's so much here, but this is one part I definitely wanted us to get to.
Yes.
The Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Again, another acronym I have not heard of before. But the process sounds very familiar. So could you talk a little bit about this and its relationship to this issue of cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
Adoption?
So the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative was, like I said, originally launched like in South Africa by Tony Blair, right? By none other than Tony Blair, just in 2002, right? I'm sure there's no significance as to like why that happened in 2002. Like, what could have happened in 2001? So it's just this thing comes out of
quickly, I don't, because people will not remember that. Because before 9/11 there was the Durban, South Africa gathering. There was all this happening. So I'm not sure if I'm on your same page with what you're saying preceded this. But could you talk a little bit about what you meant by that? Like, what was happening at that time that Blair put this together? Or what are you saying he was doing this in response to?
I was thinking more of like, even just in a global way, like in a global sense, as far as like, oh, we need more transparency in like these extractive industries, but really it's more, but really it like has nothing to do with that. It was more going to be like, it was actually more about the war on terror that was going to be, coming on, which has always been around, but like got ramped up right after 9/11. And then just kind of like selling that as some sort of like transparency, like, holding governments accountable type of thing, when really like, no, this is something else. This is actually like, you're just making it more like, you're making it easier to actually extract and like make these certain countries like follow your framework, or else they can't be a part of this thing over here. And then, they won't get investments. So it's just more of like another coercive type of, mechanism, like, multilateral agreement, as they like to call it. They love using that word, multilateral.
Yeah, and the goal here.
What were you saying about the Durban, South Africa?
I was just saying, I wasn't sure exactly what you were saying. You thought this EITI or ETI or whatever they're calling it was in response to. So I was just trying to think of what was going on there. So I know, like, just before 9/11, there was that gathering in South Africa, the World Conference Against Racism. There was all this, this. I believe that was the one, right? Or was that the? Because then I know there was somebody in the chat will remind me. There was that conference, and then there was one. Was it the part 2 that happened when Obama was in office? Because he refused to support that one. I honestly can't remember all. But so I just wanted to check in with you in terms of what you thought this was in reference to, but or response to. But the goal of which, or the objectives of it, as you describe here, was to disclose and reconcile extractive industries' revenues paid and received by governments, and to promote and strengthen multi-stakeholder dialogue approach. So as I read this, I'm thinking this is a rebranding or a new version of the Berlin Conference. It was like, how do we organize among the West the theft of African resources so that we're not competing too much against one another and stepping on each other's toes. And
then sell it as like some sort of sustainable, transparency initiative, like with open society. And
I was going to ask you about
Tony
that
Blair.
too.
Yeah, like, God, Tony Blair. Talk about blast from the past. Like, God.
Yeah, and his Clinton relationships, it's all of that. But then of course, when people read Open Society, they think of George Soros, they think of a lot of funding that goes to Black Lives Matter and other supposedly progressive entities. And there's often, and when you, in terms of that whole cognitive infiltration, they would be seen, likely seen as playing a role in that as well.
And then I wanted to mention
no, please.
So the EITI also worked with the Revenue Watch Institute, or RWI, that's the part that's a part of Open Society. And then the RWI has been like very much involved in like the internationalization and like just the implementation of EITI standards like all over the world. So they're very much like involved in that. And then in addition to that, like the Central African Republic was accepted into back into integration with the EITI last year in October of 2021. And that's why I brought that up, because like that's really important to understand, because that means they have to adhere to certain suggestions or recommendations by the EITI in order to be fully back integrated. So they have to show that they're willing to be transparent and open, right? So that's why I think it's my belief that's why that the Central African Republic is putting their natural resources on blockchain and tokenizing it. I think that's their way of showing like, oh look, like we're being transparent now. And like, just to add one more thing to that was in De Beers, right? I mentioned Maurice Templeson from De Beers. De Beers is also one of the first companies, and this is a company from like the 1800s, right? They're very well known in Africa, specifically about like their diamond industry and, you know, many other things, overthrowing stuff like that. You know the usual. So they actually were the first ones to put their diamonds on blockchain, and that's very significant because that's setting a tone. You know what I mean? Like, I know it seems like small, and they're like, oh yeah, they're trying this like pilot, whatever. It's like, no. When you're dealing with like these, like with these legacy companies, like 1800s, 1700s, you know, like we're talking like, you know, British and East India type companies, like, and they're doing this like in very specific places. It's setting a tone. Like, it's very important to pay attention to. But like I was saying, I think that's why CAR is doing the tokenizing of their minerals, is because they're trying to be accepted into this EITI thing and to seem more transparent, right?
So again, it was the same thing of, if you want World Bank and IMF support, you have to turn over and privatize all of your industry and turn it over to the West and Western companies. And here again, if you want EITI support, and you have to be transparent, which means again turning over your resources in a digital context or digitally. So could you, when you're saying tokenizing their minerals and resources, what does even that mean? How does that, like, what is
it? It means they're going to be accounting for them using like sensors and just like they're going to be putting them on blockchain essentially. So that also goes back to the whole like metaverse thing, where you're like digitally twinning or putting everything that's like physical into the digital world so that it can be speculated on through these like social impact finance investment mechanisms.
So it's just another way of opening them, opening it up to speculation and wealth creation for people who can afford to engage in all that. So
and keeping track of it in real time, That's where a lot of the sensor stuff comes in. And Alison McDowell has written about this, but she was talking about how even NORAD is involved in some of this stuff because of like the geospatial the sensors and like the geospatial I guess like strategies. Like I guess they need to track it like through the satellites and stuff. So like NORAD is even like involved in this in the Brazil one, where they're doing these like certain projects like this as far as like tokenizing things. So when you see it's like NORAD, and then it's like, what the hell? Yeah.
But sort of, I mean, but this is sort of what you're even summarizing. Whoops, in your conclusion here, that on the one hand, is they're claiming transparency and decentralization, they're tokenizing and as you said, turning over the natural resources of former colonies, African countries to the West. But you're also saying here, to that last point you just made, that the World Bank and all of the other legacy institutions are trying to make it seem like they have less influence than they once did, and that this is actually false. So that there's this idea that is part of the cryptoganda promotion campaign writ large, that cryptocurrency is overturning these old institutions. It's getting rid of these old institutions. It's allowing formerly oppressed people to become revolutionized and engaged and free. But as you're pointing out here, that seems like part of, what is that? The cognitive infiltration again, right? Because
part
that's
of the con game.
Not what's happening. So
yeah, I was going to say, so the thing I was talking about with NORAD, just to clarify, so it was from an article that Allison wrote about called The Internet of Bodies and Human Capital Futures Bets in Brazil. It's on her Wrench in the Gears website. And so basically in like 2015, there was a group of like financiers that got together in Ethiopia with like Tedros, from the World Health, all those guys. And they got together and to talk about this thing called blended finance. So that's basically where blended finance is basically when you like generate, so you generate blended finance like with data intelligence and like deal flows with like the private sector, right? So you're basically like taking like social impact finance, green, bonds, all that, like you're putting it all together and then getting like private capital to fund all that stuff. And they know that like it's going to be a loss in the beginning for the pilots, right? But you have to pilot it, but it's going to be a loss, but like not really. It's because it's like they can make up money and say what's real, say what's fake, what mess with the numbers and do whatever they want. So it's monopoly money. But yeah, so that was that specific global network is called Convergence. So that came out of that meeting in 2015 in Ethiopia. And so Convergence involves Canada, the United States, Switzerland, Netherlands, Australia, and NORAD, because the data analytics that structures the social impact markets runs through like GPS satellites. And this is in her article. Wow. So it runs through the GPS satellites connected to the sensor networks, which is why the NORAD aspect of it is involved. So this is all part of like this blended finance, microfinance, that's all going to be on blockchain and like run through these crypto, these token economies. So.
All right. So listen, yeah, people are just going to have to, first of all, we'll happily have you back on as often as we can arrange it. But people are going to have to, and myself included, we have to work through this article again several more times. So please, those listening, watching, check the link in the description and read this on your own. And let's keep circulating this in our mind grapes. There's one question that I have here that I wanted to ask you before we wrapped up today. That's not specific to what you've written here, but I just am curious what you think. A few months ago, I debated this guy, Reggie Middleton. I don't know if you're familiar with him, a black dude who's a big player apparently in DeFi. Okay. And his argument was that, like, of course, that crypto is good for black people and good for the world and da-da-da. And one of the things that he was talking about in our debate was that how, in trying to show how I was wrong, was that he had been engaging on his own, because I think he holds a patent in DeFi or something. Like he's got some, I don't know, some credibility. I don't know what it is exactly. I'm not entirely sure. But he was making deals with African nations, or claiming to be making deals with African nations to bring them DeFi and to bring them, to bring them more into the crypto world. So I was wondering, as I read your piece, do you see a role being played by sort of these lesser actors in helping pave the way? Are they playing a role in connection with these bigger efforts that you've written about, or do you see them, or are they largely irrelevant given what you're saying? But it feels like there are more. There's a number of Reggies running around that seem on some level to be helping, I don't know, pave the way for all of the mythology. So I just thought I would ask you if you had any thoughts about any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're like the part that bothers me is that I don't know if they're like just not willing to do the research, or like, it's like too much like hopium. And it's not to say that like I'm super pessimistic about everything, right? It's just I just try to be like realistic about it as much as possible, and also just entertain the other possibilities, right? I'm not going to just like live in the clouds, like just because, your protocol, this is it. Like it's all going to be interoperable, right? Like that's the part. It's like all of it's going to be interoperable, whether it's on blockchain or like a decentralized ledger system, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, whatever, name you want to put on the unicorn. Yes, Allison is great. It doesn't really matter, because all of that is going to be like funneled back into the institutional, like the central institutional systems. And that's why they're now, like, a lot of these crypto people are realizing, like, oh no, they're cracking down on crypto. It's like, yeah, that was always the plan. It was always the plan. They do that all the time. They do it with everything. They get you with the, it's like, oh look, you don't need KYC, this, that, and the other. And then they come and, they lay down the law. So, and
another quick question here. I don't think this was Kagame. I don't think shows up in your article, but are you aware? Ricky's asking about Kagame's role in bringing crypto to the continent.
Yeah. I've written about Kagame before, not so much in relation to crypto and stuff, but just like in general. But yeah, Rwanda is another hub for that, as well as like Ethiopia, Kenya too. Kenya is huge, so Kenyatta. But yes, Kagame, he's always there when they tap, and they're like, oh, you need to go shill for this, and he's like, okay, sure. So go. It's like
he raises his hand quick, like who's going to shill for us? He's like, he's
like right here.
right. I got you. I got
this. So.
Well, listen, Sebs, I the last time you were here and broke down the cryptocurrency and its the role specifically of data mining in all of this, as we wrap up this morning, I did want to ask you about that again, just to remind folks about that particular part of this, that if I remember correctly, your argument was largely that former colonies are encouraged to engage the crypto space because not of the financial investment per se that they would able to contribute to because they don't have any money, but their personal data that they give up is turned into wealth by all these companies that sell it. So has any updates on that? Or is that just being enhanced through the process you're describing here?
We talked about Cardano last time, right? And the kids in Ethiopia and like the Epstein connection with all that. So now Cardano's doing the digital ID system for the entire country of Ethiopia. So now they're doing it for the whole. So see, it always starts with like, we're going to pilot it on these kids and some teachers. And then now they're doing the entire, 50 million plus. I think it's actually, are they at 100 million now? How many million people?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, wow. So it's just, so they've kind of moved on to that. I mean, they're accelerating this. And I want to make this like parallel to even Ukraine, right? Where like you see this war happening and like just like there's just a lot of displacement and stuff. And then you see like this crypto economy or this token economy kind of rising. It's a very similar thing happened in Ethiopia when, like the war was happening and all that. And then this digital ID system kind of like just showed up. So it's almost like a lot of this is also being used, like a lot of this conflict and stuff is also being used to like accelerate some of this, just from what I've seen. So
wow. Well, listen, Sebs Solomon, definitely thank you very much for your work. This latest piece is titled the French Imperialism versus Crypto Colonialism, the Central African Republic Experiment. And the link is in the show description. And we definitely want to encourage people to check out her Doom and Gloom YouTube channel and get more of this. And we look forward to having you back here. Yeah.
Oh, I could just say that definitely check out more of those articles on Silicon Icarus that's run by Raul Diego on there. And he has a lot of stuff that he has. He has a great article about Afghanistan and the girls who code and how like, you no longer need like boots on the ground anymore. So you just have these people, that's what the whole like removing the troops out of Afghanistan was about. You don't need them because they've built all these like sensors and Internet of Things and coders in Afghanistan that they're like doing this from a little station. So it's interesting how like that ties into the whole like the troops are leaving thing. So it's I can send you some of those articles, but Leo's
absolutely
Leo's also another contributor who writes at Silicon Icarus, and he does a lot of great work on like the humanitarian aid aspect of and how like crypto and blockchain and all that is involved in just like that entire apparatus. And so and of course I've mentioned Allison McDowell and Allie, my good friend and my research partner. So
right on. Now, well, shout out to all of you. We appreciate it. And thanks for coming through this morning again. And again, anytime. Look forward to doing it again. So appreciate you. Sebs Solomon, everybody. Take care and peace, because we know you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton would say. Catch you next time. All right, everybody. Big shout out to Sebs Solomon. Big shout out to April Goggans and Max Rameau, PACA, BLM-DC. And all of you in the chat as well for coming through this morning. Really appreciate you supporting the program and the channel. I do have one quick update. I got in an email from our discussion the other day about Jay-Z, Jack Dorsey, and their crypto initiative to help Black people. From shout out to Michael Hamilton, who sent me this. Hey, Dr. Ball, you may already know this, but another connection I haven't heard you guys make over there the last few days when talking about the Jay-Z, Jack Dorsey crypto initiative is that Cash App is owned by Block Incorporated, formerly known as Square Incorporated. Jack Dorsey is the CEO and the founder of Block Inc., again, formerly known as Square. Block Inc. is, as a whole, has a huge focus on crypto. This further emphasizes the connections in the context of predatory initiative Dorsey and Jay-Z are kicking off at the Marcy projects, including the involvement of the Black Bitcoin billionaire, whom you said is employed or sponsored by Cash App, one incestuous and interlocking ball of predation and exploitation. So thank you, Michael Hamilton, for that update on the connection between Block Jack Dorsey, Jay-Z, and all the others that we talked about the other day involved in all that madness and nonsense. So, yeah. Anyway, let's see. That's it. I think that's it. Definitely want to encourage folks to, there was one other thing I quickly want to encourage people to do something. I talk about them a lot, particularly in terms of the PP newsletter and all of their work around COINTELPRO and Black Liberation and more. The Freedom Archives is looking for some further donation and support. So please, if you can support them, make a donation, freedomarchives.org for more, and support them in their work. They've been doing a lot of great work for a long time around political prisoners, Black liberation and more, and deserve our support if we got it. So, and please make sure you got the bell clicked, that is, because there's a lot of stuff coming up on the channel. In general, of course, the Remix Morning Show is back tomorrow morning. And then after that, tomorrow, I'll be hosting a conversation with Dr. Zarqa Parvez Abdullah about the World Cup in Qatar and the politics of sport. You don't want to miss that. The article she's written on it, I think I'm going to use in this discussion to kick off a series. We're going to do a little summer series leading up to the World Cup. The politics of the World Cup in sports, and maybe look at some of the countries that are participating and how they are doing economically, materially, racially, socially, et cetera, and so forth, ideologically, and use that as a springboard for some conversation. And then got some good stuff just on my own end, interestingly, coming up on the 23rd. Other things will pop up in the interim, I'm sure, but on the 23rd, be talking about Black radicalism and revolution in Palestine with Professor Rabab Ibrahim Abdulhadi, who will join us to discuss her article, Framing Resistance, Call and Response, reading Assata Shakur's Black Revolutionary Radicalism in Palestine. I'm very much looking forward to that. It's been an interview we've been working on for actually a couple of years now. And then I'm very excited that on the 27th, and again, other things will be happening in the interim, all the regularly scheduled broadcasts, et cetera, but just some things that have already been scheduled that I'm very excited about. My man, Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows, and some guests, contributors to his new anthology coming out, recently released on my other good comrades, Diasporic Africa Public Incorporated Press, Kwesi Konadu's Press, The Trials of Mumia Abu Jamal, a biography in 25 voices. Will be premiering here, getting launched here, getting its media debut here on Monday, June 27th, with Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows and a number of other guests, contributors. We're still finalizing all that. I think Mama Julia Wright will be one of them. And well, so anyway, just make sure you got the bell and everything selected and that you're all subscribed and membered up and all that good stuff. And a big thanks again to all the guests and to all of you for being here this morning. Really appreciate it. And then, of course, as Fred Hampton used to say, to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. Catch you next time, starting tomorrow morning with the Remix Morning Show. Peace, everybody.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Let me show these suckers how to ball out here. Oh, man, let me get this together here. Oh, layup. Oh, no. Shot. Oh, three. Oh, it's like Brick City out here. Mid-range. Oh, my goodness. I can't buy a bucket out here. I missed the whole damn basket. Oh, my goodness. What's going on, man? My game is looking trash. Oh, here we go. Black Power Media shirt. Now we cooking. Tree. I'm taking all three of y'all with these right here. Between the legs. Oh, my goodness. Behind the back. Layup. Oh, did he just do a reverse? He is in beast mode out here. I ain't got to look. It's falling. Oh, my goodness. This guy is going 3, 2, 1. Kobe. Nice. Black Power Media, baby. Nice. Empower yourself. Go get you some of that Black Power Media gear right here, blackpowermedia.org. Yeah.